Okay,
Yep.
so welcome back, Noel. And in this episode, episode 6, you're looking at from Arabic script to Latin script. That's the big question. Why is Maltese written in a Latin script? So over to you, Noel.
Hello, Mel, and thank you for having me again. Well, the question of why today rather than why we're going to look at how, because the why is quite easy to answer. Why it's because we are in the influence of Europe, especially Sicily, and as we saw on the previous episode, until the 16th century. The Maltese were, although they were speaking in Maltese, even the nobles, but ultimately what they were writing in the Latin script. So they were writing Arabic, but in the Latin script.
Just before you go into, having a Latin script is a political statement as well. It's obviously convenient if when interacting with the Europeans, but like for example, if you go to some Eastern European countries where they would have had a Slavic language, they've moved away from, say, a Slavic script to a Latin-based script as well, obviously
Yep,
to convey a sense of where they feel centered towards. Do you
exactly.
know what? Yeah.
Exactly, the identity, as we saw in the Norman Sicily, what you would have, you have Jews that are speaking Arabic but writing it in the Jewish script. Italo-Romans that are writing it in Greek. Greek that is written in Latin, if I remember correctly. Um, Arabic that is written in yeah, in the Hebrew script, and then in Malta we've got Arabic that is written in the Latin script.
Mm.
Now, what is interesting is that if we compare the few dictionaries and manuscripts and documents that we have in Maltese, what we find is that if we compare them with each other, they found it easy to write certain words like A, B, D, E, F. Of course, these are in English, not in Maltese, right? Maltese, they would be A, B, D, F. They had problems with the ch, with the j, g, the ein, the Arabic ein,
Mhm.
with the ch, with the y, with the k, with the w, and also with the Arabic phonemes.
Yeah.
Now, Thezan was a French knight, and he made a dictionary, and also he wrote the um, Maltese musket drill. Right? He proposed that Maltese should be written in a hybrid Arabic-Latin alphabet. And as you can see, we've got the Arabic characters. Ch, he write it in Arabic character as well. As well, we have the G and the Ein, the H and the H. Right? Now, sometimes what how they're represented is not consistent, but that's why we've got, for example, a G and Rhine, and as well as for the Ein, we have sometimes to write it as an Ein and sometimes as a Rhine, or it could be also that how the Maltese were pronouncing it.
That actually sounds like a very nice system because for the harder sounds to represent, using the Arabic made a lot of sense. I
And
thought
yep,
that's a pretty good solution of the thought.
yeah.
If
Uh, mhm. So, and the Kaf, for example, for the as well as the sh, right? So the sh represent he represented it by the Arabic um, character. Now, in the before the 18th century, actually, what we find, especially in the 17th century, we find that um, Maltese was either written just in Latin characters or else some kind of hybrid, those that knew Arabic, hybrid Arabic and Latin characters. Um, For example, we have an example of Dun Juan Kakiya, who was a well-read priest and well-versed actually in Old and New Arabic. And he was one of these writers that wrote in the mixed Latin Arabic script. And this would, in the 19th century, it would be part of a big debate of how to write Maltese. Now, therefore, what does it what does it mean? It means that actually it allows us to see how Arab phonologies changed in time. And therefore, we can come to the conclusion. Well, first of all, the dad, the sad, the sa, and the ta. So they are these four Arabic letters here that are never attested in Maltese. As we saw in the in the language team, these two words are never found in pre-Hilali Maghrebi Arabic, in Andalusi Arabic, in Sikul Arabic, and the Maltese. And this has quite big implications, as we saw in the linguistic team, on the position of classical Arabic in the context of the Arabic languages. And also we see that still by the 17th century, first of all, in 1483, Maltese, they were accompanying Sicilian delegates to Tunisia, and they were acting as an interpreter presumably because Maltese is so close to Tunisian, right? And what is more, I think, incredible is that even as late as 1637, the Maltese were perfectly able to follow Syrian Maronite priests who celebrated Mass in Malta, but in their native dialect. So even in their native dialect from
Wow.
Syria, the Maltese in 1637 were perfectly able to follow the Mass. And what happened after was that they were both looking and like amazed and like, ah, look, we have this the same. I mean, it's something that even I still do it when I meet with Arabs. You know, it's like, oh, you know, we have this is the same or it's slightly different.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, this happened still in 1637.
That's incredible. Yeah.
There is also another question here that we have to remember also that the pre-Hilali and the post-Hilali Arabic in the Maghreb, which is a divide, right? Which kind of re-Arabized the Maghreb, but this re-Arabization didn't happen in Malta, in Sicily, and in Spain. And yet, still, they were able to communicate quite well with each other. Now, what do we find? We find that the dal, the sal, the sa, um, so the sal and the sa, we Maltese lost it in the end of the 17th century. The Rhine, the Ain, and the Ha and the Ha, these were lost in the early 19th century. So see how very late
Wow.
Maltese lost the Arab phonologies. Also, another thing is that look at how in 1483, when the Azar Marsani, who was Maltese and went and acted as an interpreter, that's also the time when we have the Maltese first Maltese uh, poem or document in Maltese. And finally, in the 1930s, we've got the standard alphabet. Now, if we look at the Il-Kantilena, which is the first the first document in Maltese, we find, well, first of all, we find influences of Sicilian influence. من يبدل المكان يبدل الفنتورة. It's a calque of who changes his whereabouts, changes his fortune. In Sicilian is cui muta locu muta ventura. Um, we can do some notes on how close it is to Arabic, but we still see some changes, right? For example, instead of haktar, we see haktar. And also, this is another interesting thing that the writer, Cassar, he writes this symbol here, this one here. So no one really knows what it means, but it's inconsistently used to mean double M and double N. Now, in Arabic, we have the shadda, which is used to, if you have a letter, instead of writing two letters, you just write this symbol, and that means it's a double letter, right? So, said for example, here we see shadda, you just write D, and then you write the symbol above the letter D. Now, so Farrugia then says, well, maybe could this be a remnant of the shadda? And in Malta, they were writing it because we have to remember that this is a document in the Latin script. But still, we have this one acting as a shadda on the Latin script. So Farrugia says maybe this is a relic shadda on the Latin script.
It makes sense, yeah.
Now, if we go to the late 18th century, we cannot talk about the script without talking about Michel Anton Vassalli, who is the one of the fathers of the Maltese language. Um, it's also important to note that he taught Syro-Chaldean in Rome, but he knew Arabic and also, of course, Latin, right? So this is his alphabet. As you can see, it's a bit of a mix between Latin, Hebrew, and according to Farrugia, based on Latin, Hebrew, and Chaldean. It was too complicated, so he released another one in 1827. Ultimately, the Maltese didn't like this alphabet because, well, first of all, it seemed weird to them because they were um, used to the Latin script, like, and they were they were educated in Italian, everything in Italian, and then suddenly we have this script that not only has Latin, but it also has, for example, this one, as you can see, is the sh, and this is very similar to the Cyrillic. So we've got like, and also they didn't know how to print it, and he invented
Uh,
some characters as well. So,
yeah.
and that's why like the Maltese resisted these two alphabets.
Yeah.
Now, parallel to this, a little bit later, starting in the 18th century until in the 19th century, this mostly happened in the 19th century, was um, Malta was taken over by the British, and there was a big debate of what to do, whether we should be more closely aligned with Italy or more closely aligned with Britain, or maybe we are national, we are just a Maltese nation of ourselves. For example, to the English, when the English first came to Malta, to them it was Malta was Italy. And for example, Alexander Ball, the commander of the British forces um, that landed in Malta, I mean, it's not that because maybe I described myself not correctly exactly. It's not that the British came and took Malta. The Maltese invited the British to help them against the Napoleon. And then they decided to stay. In any case, when the British forces,
You're telling, yeah, I have to laugh there because you're telling that to an Irishman. If you invite the British, they're very quite happy to stay. So,
and anyway, the commander, when he came to Malta, described Valletta as the most tranquil city in Italy. This is the important part of all of this. That he described Valletta as the most tranquil city in Italy. Um, but later on, um, the English, they were afraid that Maltese would want to be part of the Italian realm rather than the English realm, and so they were pushing to fight with the Italian influence. So the Maltese society was split into three parts. You've got those that they thought that Maltese is an Italian dialect because it's part of the Italian realm, and therefore Maltese is an Italian dialect, and therefore the alphabet should be on Latin. On the other hand, you've got those that were more pro-English, pro-British. They said, no, Maltese is an Arabic dialect, and then the script should be only Arab, which is very interesting. And then in the middle, you've got people that are saying, no, we are a nation, we are a unique nation, and therefore the alphabet is Latin and Arab. And also because another argument for having a Latin Arab alphabet is that um, all the great writers of Maltese before they wrote, like those that wrote about Maltese, they wrote in Latin Arab alphabet. Oops. However, there was a total chaos. There were at least some 32 systems, alphabets, sorry. Um, and ultimately, the government decided that it should be, the British government decided that it should be a mixed Latin Arab alphabet that it was taught in schools. And this is an example, right? And we can see that we've got Latin here. This is reading government primary school textbook published in 1839. And you can see that there are both Latin letters and Arabic letters here.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Mhm. Another view of this. Another view, for example, look how he wrote to the sun. Esh lesh shemsh, right? To esh shemsh. So this it's somewhere here. It is to the sun, from the sun. Min esh shemsh, for example, here, right? Min esh shemsh.
In that context, it doesn't look very nice. Looks a bit weird there.
Um, Others, for example, this is an example of the brothers Bellanti, who proposed that actually Maltese should be written in Arabic, and this is a screenshot from or a scan of their document published in 1829.
Yeah.
And so finally, there was also the story is more interesting. We've got, for example, the Reverend Chileans who was kicked out from Lebanon by the Maronite Church because he was like trying to convert the Lebanese into Protestantism. He came to Malta and he set up an Arabic press in Malta. And he hated the Italians, and he devoted quite a lot of energy of trying to write Maltese in the Arabic script. And Samit then says, okay, if we have to do this project, right, the first problem that we have is should we write it etymologically or should we write it phonetically? Since by this time, by the mid 19th century, the Maltese had lost some of the Arabic phonemes. So, well, if you write it according to the Arabic grammar and lexicon, it will be difficult, if not impractical. Um, and another criticism that Zammit makes on Schliens is that, well, he used his examples were words which are derived of Arabic origin. But what are we going to do with the big part, but by this time, of the language that's derived from the Romans? what are we going to do? How are we going to write it? So for the technical part, it would be a bit of of a very big challenge. And this is what I have for today.
Oh, well, maybe just on that. So, in the end, what did they come down to? Like, who decided the last part?
In the end, well, because on top of the alphabet language, the alphabet question led to the language question and the English one over the Italian. So, but we have even for example, the Shirka Shamia, which was one of the one of even they who were like trying to write Maltese, as Arabic as possible and like this. Even they, by the late 19th century, they conceded that Maltese should be written in the Latin script entirely. So we see a consensus. The Maltese arrived to a consensus in the late 19th century that Maltese should be written in the Latin script. Then it
Um,
was until they decided on the alphabet, then if we had, there was another 40 years, basically,
okay.
until
Could you,
1930s.
yeah, could you show us the final thing, the final script, if you have it there? Because I think it would be a shame, having gone through the history of it, not to see what they decided upon.
Aha, okay. Ah, all right. So maybe we can do
Let me pause it
this
here.
one. This
Sorry.
one.
So which one?
This one. This is the standard.
Oh, right. Okay. So that's
This
the
is
one
the
they kind of,
standard without the
yeah,
green box.
yeah.
So that's
Okay.
what they
Settles
settled
upon.
on. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much, Noel, for this series. Not just one series, really, but two series: the linguistic series and then the historical series on Malta and the origin of the Maltese language, the language that's Arabic written in a Latin script. It's been quite a enthralling story with lots of twists and turns, and you've gone into it in great depth. And I'm sure the real story, is probably even more complicated than than what you've presented. I'd say. Would that be fair to say?
No,
There's a lot more to it.
it's very much more complicated. There is a lot more to say. But of course, we have to keep things a little bit short, so I had to not to keep out a lot of things. Yeah, and uh, I think it's well, it I had to keep out a lot of things, but I think finally, if I had like to squeeze it, and see what are the key points. Well, from the linguistic team, what the key point is that the early Muslims that conquered the Maghreb and Spain, so we're talking about not earlier than 718 AD, they were probably still bilingual in Arabic and Aramaic, at least a part of the society. So no surprise of the Aramaisms in the Quran there. And also, it's quite interesting that Aramaic had such a profound effect on Arabic that it makes Arabic today undefinable. Therefore, again, not surprising to have Aramaic influence on the Quran. The
Yeah,
absence of the Dad and the Tha in oops, in pre-Hilali Maghrebi Arabic, Andalusi, Maltese, and Sikul Arabic. That strength, according to Al-Jallad, it strengthens the case of classical Arabic that was invented after the Arabic conquest, right? And and therefore, another question is, well, maybe should we read the Dad and the Tha as a Sad and the Ta instead in the Quran? And what definitions? what would the results be if we do like this? And also that the Quranic Arabic is not the ancestor of classical Arabic. This is also important. And if you look at the historical theme, I think it's very interesting that even as late as the 10th century, we've got Ibn Khawqal who's using a Hebrew word rather than an Arab word to describe Muslim apostates, as well as what is describing the marriage practices between the Christians and the Muslims. And Norman Sicily is also interesting because what we see, uh, as we said previously, no, Arabic written in Hebrew, Italo-Romance written in Greek, Greek written in Latin, Arabic written in Greek, Arabic written in Latin, of which the remnant is Maltese.
Yeah.
So the theory that in the Quran we find Aramaic words, but these are written in the Arabic script, is not that far-fetched after all. You know, and you can even think even of today, let's say if you go, I don't know, Transcarpathia, for example, right? The Hungarian part of Ukraine. You still where there is this influx, you see Cyrillic, Hungarian words written in Cyrillic, for example. And the Aramaic words that are written in Arabic in the Quran is also is not that far-fetched as well when you consider all these things because then, especially if we consider that Arabic script is derived from the Aramaic script.
One of the things that strikes me now, looking back over the series, is prior to the series, my impression was, and it just with my very vague knowledge of Malta, was that the Crusader knights were on the island down through the centuries, continuously since the time of the Crusades. This was my perception, that it was a strongly Catholic country, and I never knew there were any Arabs on the island. I was completely oblivious to all of this. So I didn't realize that the history was so different to my perception. So it's been
The
a big eye
Knights,
opener.
the Knights actually came to Malta after they were begging Europe for 7 years to give them a place to stay. And
Yeah,
the king of of Spain, he told them, "Look, you can have Malta and Tunis, I know,
yeah.
for a falcon every year." And
Um, what century did they go to Malta?
in
Do you remember?
1530,
It's
fif-
1030
15,
or 1530.
1530, yes,
1530. Yeah,
1530. So 7 years before that, 1523, they were kicked out from Rhodes by the Ottomans. They spent 7 years trying to find a place, and then they were given Malta and Tunis because also for the Spanish king, this was like it was a vulnerable point at the time. The Ottomans, they had taken all the Maghreb.
yeah,
They were encroaching in the Balkans,
yeah.
and like the next place that they're going to attack is going to be Malta. So to get rid of this problem, he said, "Okay, I will take Malta." Anyway, I'm
That
going
was
to
a good
lose it.
move.
So
Yeah,
at the end of the day, yes.
it was a very good move.
Mhm. And
Excellent.
this Aramaic Arabic overlap reminds us also of the Levant, that it had not only um, Arabic Aramaic overlap, but also a Greek Arabic overlap as well, that sometimes we tend to forget a little bit. For example, we have Muawiyah's inscription, the translation of the Greek text into Arabic. As we saw, Ruh al-Qudus as well, I was very surprised to find that the first Arabic word of Ruh al-Qudus is actually in the Quran. And this is, um, according to that paragraph and Wikipedia, it was a literal translation of Greek. So it's not as maybe big, this Aramaic Arabic overlap as, sorry, it's not as, this Greek Arabic overlap maybe it's not as big as the Arab Aramaic, but we should not um, ignore it
Disregarded.
or
Yeah, yeah,
disregard it. Yes, yes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
oops. So also it was interesting because we see like how a language changes from one to another. We've got different people that are speaking differently, maybe even not even communicating so much with each other as we saw in Sicily, but still able to influence each other. Like as Dali describes it as more of a mosaic rather than a melting pot. And if we go to the 7th century, we see the same kind of this transition from the Arabic to the Aramaic. And it is, I'm always think about this when I see what's happening in Malta today, unfortunately, of this transition from Maltese to English. And personally, I think, I don't know if Maltese will survive after this generation, unfortunately, but it's a change that's happening within a generation.
Scary,
So
isn't it?
yeah, and when I see it, I am always reminded of this as well, of the 7th century, the Levant, and how Aramaic gave way to Arabic. And if Maltese is giving so quickly away to English, which are not of the same family tree, how easier it is for Aramaic to give way to Arabic, which had lots of influence over each other for such a longer period of time. Um,
Yeah.
Finally, I just want to thank you, man, for having this idea. I ultimately ballooned to a series, but
Yeah.
I learned a lot doing this, and also thank you for your guidance in making this
Well,
presentations
yeah.
and that.
So I don't know if we mentioned this, probably did at the beginning, but Noel and I met in Malta. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? Can't remember. Two
Two
years ago, I
years
think.
now, yes, almost 2 years.
Yeah. And yeah, just when in the middle of a conversation, the idea just emerged. I don't know if it was me suggested or you suggested, but it
No,
seemed
no,
like, oh,
you.
this could be. It seemed like a really good area to look into because so that wouldn't be anything I could have been able to delve into. It was beyond me, but no, this is good. I think this is a great contribution to understanding the dynamics of that whole period that is incredibly complicated. And I think this is probably a very neglected area. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, many of the information here is I also it's not found on YouTube or like this. It's found in articles and papers
Yeah,
and books, but I don't think that there is any on YouTube.
yeah. And probably, typically what happens with a lot of these academic papers is they're read by a few hundred scholars and they don't really have much of an impact beyond kind of a relatively small academic community. So hopefully it's given some information to the wider community so that people have a greater appreciation of quite an interesting part of history and geography and so on. So
Hmm.
thanks
Yeah,
a million, Noel.
yeah.
Right,
Hopefully
go
it
ahead.
helps in the topic of the channel, which is the development of Islam. And also, like hitting two birds with one stone for the Maltese to appreciate the history and the language, because the first thing that you need to do to maintain it is that you need to take care of it, and in order to take care of it, you need to learn about it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm honored
One
to
last
chip
thing.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing. We spoke about this offline, but what I would love is for you to come back at a later stage with people like Murad, with the linguists, maybe Odon, and maybe let's have a discussion with ideas with around language, Murad's translation, what you've discovered. I think that would be really fruitful. So I think just need to hear from Murad and the linguist if they're up for that and Modan. But I think that would be a good thing. Do you fancy that?
Well, I'm not of the caliber, that's for sure,
Ah, not at
but
all.
of course, if they are interested, I'm of course I will be.
Yeah, that would be great. Listen, thanks a million, and thank you to the audience that's been following through the series. So I'm sure if you leave questions below the video, Noel will be quite happy to respond.
Yep.
So thank you all, and
Thank
thanks,
you,
Noel.
man. Thank you.